All right, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon. Looks like we're right there. You got me today. I'm going to be doing this presentation on QuickBooks Online. This is just a basic, super basic course. We're not getting into the nitty gritty. I'm not going to dive into invoicing or accounts payable or some of these types of things. The main thing in this is to get your feet wet, to get a little bit of basic understanding. We're going to look at how we syncing bank accounts and how they sync and putting transactions in, pulling transactions from the bank, looking at the register, reconciling the checkbook, and just making sure that we're constantly keeping up. I like to tell people, if you're doing this for your company, 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you just do it every day, just a little bit every day, and it's going to be considerably a lot easier just to keep things going. I am going to be doing this on the most advanced version that QuickBooks offers. For most people, 95 out of 100, they don't need this. You don't need this version. But just because these are test versions that they allow us to use, these test drive accounts, I don't want to use the lower level one because I can't turn on things like class tracking, which is kind of on maybe their second tier version. So again, this is going to be advanced. I'm not going to get into the usage of advances versus the others, but I will touch a little bit on the class tracking side of things and getting in. So I'll do some screen shares. Mainly the whole time will be screen share. You've got me right here before we get kind of rocking and rolling on it. But we will be diving in here in about 5 seconds. So I'm going to just pop this over. So you're going to be able to see my lovely screen over here. And now we're chatting. So basically, we're going to use this lovely file, this Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. And there's a test drive that you can actually do. You can actually Google it. If you just want to play around a little bit, you can Google QuickBooks Online Test Drive, and you're going to get a couple different versions just to play around with it. So you don't have to actually buy it. You can just play around. This is the low version. This is the one that we're going to play with today. But as soon as you do, it's just kind of a freebie to play with, right? Opens up this window, and here we are, Craig's Design and Landscape Services. Obviously, dummy company, nothing's really happening here, but it gives us an idea to kind of train on it. Now, the focus of this is if you're used to using desktop version is obviously a little different, but the functionality is still the same. The difference is we don't necessarily have drop-down windows like we do in a Windows application, right? When we're using our desktop stuff, they do these kind of side scrolling navigation bars. But there are multiple ways to get things done, right? I can create a check right here, but I can also come into expenses and create a check through this area. So understand there are multiple ways to get to the same thing. But the first thing I wanted to focus in on is really simple, right? Like accessing this thing. So typically when you want to get into QuickBooks, you can ultimately, like what I do often is I don't actually have a bookmark for this. I got other things bookmarked, but for this, I'll just kind of go QBO, log in, and I'll just drop it into a Google search because obviously it's going to come up sign in access. It's going to come in right away. And then from here is where we will actually sign into the online account. And when you sign into online, I'm already logged in because I'm using this dummy account, but you would get your username, password. It's typically going to be your email. I think they require that now. It's going to be your email. And that's going to bring you in. And then if you have multiple companies online, you actually get a chance to pick which company you want as soon as you do log in. If you only have one company, then obviously it's going to take you kind of right to that company, that landing page. Typically, when you come in, you are going to land on this kind of informational page, and you can customize the things that you want to see. What I enjoy telling people, I like to tell people, is that you can turn this into a job. If you want analytics and you want bar graphs and you want reports, you can go crazy. I typically try to do the KISS method, keep it stupid simple, right? And the reason is because our businesses are not about bookkeeping. Our businesses are about doing what it takes to make money. This is a necessary evil for quality tax planning and some of these things. So let's make it easy, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, right? There's things in here for invoicing, okay? Well, I'll give you a perfect example. When I teach this, I actually tell people to use other invoicing products. I don't actually like invoicing inside of QuickBooks unless I want to use their merchant services or something like that where I have my own credit card processing. Understand when you do use credit card processing in QuickBooks, they are not the cheapest provider. They're a simple provider like a Square, but they're going to ding you for almost 3%. You can get better deals out there using other things. So one of the things I will show you is I often like to point people to this. This is actually what we use as a firm for invoicing. It's called the Invoice Ninja, web-based. It's an invoicing module. I can connect merchant services to this through a bunch of different service providers, and you can pick ones that work for you. You might even have one already for like merchant services, but I like it because I can keep my invoicing away from my books. And the reasoning behind it is it's just the nature of how QuickBooks treats invoicing, right? When you invoice inside of QuickBooks, you have to invoice. Then you have to receive a payment against the invoice. These are actually physical things you have to do just to get the money in your bank. So you invoice, then you physically receive a payment against an invoice. Then the last step is you're going to actually go make a deposit. Well, what we run into is people changing invoices after they've received the money and just trying to, like they use invoices like estimates and it throws their books into a whack. So what I like to teach people is let's do it on a cash basis method. Let's do it as if we know that when we deposit money that 98% of the time, the money that's being deposited is coming in off of revenues. So I don't need to actually run it through an invoicing module. I can just call it revenues. And make it really, really, really easy. The same thing goes on payables. You're going to notice on expenses here, I can actually, from a cash flow perspective, put bills into the system and create accounts payable, meaning I've put the bill in, but I haven't paid the bill yet. Well, why take the extra step when I can just have a folder that says bills to be paid on my desk? And then once a week or once a month or however you choose to do it, you just come in here and you actually just do the expenses and you cut the checks or record the auto pays because most everything is auto paid anyways these days. You can skip that, record a bill, pay a bill, right? And all the steps that come along with it. Sure, I get it. It can help with cash flow to record bills on an accrual basis and timing things, but tell you what, again, KISS method for me all the way. I use the register. I keep my checkbook reconciled. My deposits tend to be revenues. My class track them in a way. We'll talk about that. But that's the gist, right? So we're not gonna focus on receivables. I'm not gonna focus on some of these other things that you can do in this system because you can spend a lot of time complicating it and a lot of time screwing it up, which costs money for us to undo. And so I do like kind of other modules. And again, I'm an accountant. I can utilize this all day. I could invoice in this all day. I still don't. I do use this. And it's cheap. I mean, it's super cheap to invoice on a different web-based platform. And then I keep it segregated away from my financial stuff. So with that being said, let's dive in. So when we come in originally, oftentimes we're going to see this homepage. You might see some weird error messages or things like that that's coming in there. Again, fully customizable. These boxes are not something I would probably do. It's a little busy to me. I kind of like this, right? The checkbook balances. I kind of like the shortcuts, but like invoices not being paid, P&Ls, profits down. No, to me, I don't like it, but to each their own on some of those types of things. But this is the dashboard. It's meant to feel much like the dashboard if you've ever done desktop, where they give you all those bubbles, the buttons, and then the lines and how things link in doing those things. So you just tend to land here. I don't spend much time here. For me, I spend most of my time under transactions, bank transactions. I would say that, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I'm working out of my bank transactions because I do sync everything. Syncing is the power to QuickBooks Online. Desktop has syncing functionality, but online syncing is great, right? I mean, you connect your accounts to it. You put your username and password in once. It hides it behind the scenes, and it can go grab new transactions. And ultimately, it knows the date, knows the dollar amount, and for the most part, it knows the vendor, albeit there's always some transactions that are a little funky. And then I just have to tell it where to put it, right? And based upon the chart of accounts. So before we go into here, let's actually look at the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is the backbone of any accounting system. This is literally the most important piece to a business. Chart of accounts is where we determine where our bank accounts are, our assets, our liabilities, as well as our equity accounts, our income accounts, our cost of goods accounts, and our general operating and expenditure accounts. Just as a definition for little accounting 101, we're going to come on over here to our chart of accounts and you're going to see it, right? So type of account. So account type, we've got our bank accounts, all right, self-explanatory. We do have AR in here. Again, this is a dummy account that's utilizing all the functionality, but this would be sales for people that still owe us money, accounts receivables, sales completed, clients haven't paid. We've got our other current assets. These could be prepaid expenses, right? I paid for my insurance a year in advance. I haven't accrued for it yet. Very kind of complicated. I tend to not teach this because you kind of have to be an accountant then if you're making journal entries and all that stuff. We've got fixed assets, which are going to be really the stuff that is going to last you for years. Write this down. $2,500 for a single asset means we're probably going to capitalize it. So, for example, I go to Best Buy, I buy a computer, right? If I buy a computer, I'm probably going to have a fixed asset here that says like computers and related. Obviously, this account doesn't have it, but I would probably put that computer there if and only if that computer and its peripherals that I bought alongside it were $2,500 or more. If it was under that number, I'm probably going to just drop it way down here to an expense called office expense or supplies. I don't have to do the fixed assets. We're looking for things that are significant, that are material, that are going to last for years. That's the definition of a fixed asset. A car, of course, right? Super expensive stand-up desk, okay, right? That could be something. A big server, sure. A big copier, sure. But most of the time you buy a laptop today, it's small enough, just take it right down to our expenses down below, okay? Then we get into our credit cards, pretty self-explanatory, but they are considered liabilities, right? Things that we owe. We have our current liabilities. This could be anywhere from lines of credits to payroll and things like that, but it's basically things that I owe. Number one thing that tends to be in here are debts for fixed assets, right? I buy a truck, I get a loan on it. I'm probably going to have to put the number in here, and then my balancing entry is going to be over into the liability side. I probably have a loan for that truck. The equity is if we were to unload everything, right? We use all of our assets to pay off all our liabilities. It is the mathematical equation of whatever's left. Okay, super important account, equity accounts. We're not going to get into the tax side of things, but it is really important. From an equity. Then we draw a line in the sand underneath equity. And now we begin the P&L or the income statement. Everything above this, by the way, is on the balance sheet. And the balance sheet is a statement that tells us really what the assets and liabilities or the health, I like to consider the health of a business at any moment in time. It is cumulative. Right? It's not an annual thing like this income and this stuff that gets closed out at the end of the year. Income and expenses go to zero and we start on the beginning every fiscal year, which is mainly January 1st for most people, can be different dates. That is going to start at zero every single year. But so we draw a line in the sand here and then we get into income. We're going to use these accounts and our expense accounts more than any other account besides, of course, the bank. But these are the things we're going to be telling the system. Oh, this was for this. This was for this. Oh, this was insurance for work. This was my subscription for my professional dues. This was a lawyer bill, right? We're going to tell the system that. The system does have a little AI in it. It will, try to learn from that. But this chart of accounts is adaptable, manipulatable. You'll notice there's no numbers. I like numbers in my chart of accounts. This is not a numbered chart of accounts. If I was to build this thing, I'd probably put numbers because I like to put things in using 10 keys. It makes us go faster as accountants, but that's okay. You don't have to. I can type ADV oftentimes, and it's going to pop in the rest of that from an advertising perspective. So it is okay, but it is changeable. It is manipulatable. I can add things, right? So for example, let's go back to that computer example. I want to create, I'm like, oh, I bought a computer. I remember Jonathan said over 2,500. Okay, great. This was a $3,000 super powerful gaming laptop. So, yep, I need a fixed asset for that. So I'm going to go new. And from here, I'm going to come up and I'm going to say, yep, this is going to be some form of a fixed asset. And I'm going to call it computers and related, right? I could just call it computers. I can call it what I want. And the detailed type is going to be some sort of fixed assets computers, which is great. I'm not going to put anything in from this perspective. I just get in a chart of account. I'm not putting in any original stuff. This would be like if I was going to start this from a financial statement from a different software. I might put a number in here to get it in there, but I still probably wouldn't. I would do it all in one entry. So this is mainly going to be left alone, but I'm going to go ahead and save this up, right? And you're going to notice I now have a new fixed asset computers here, considered a fixed asset, computers and related. So bang, right? But I can take that and I can move it. I can also make this thing inactive, right? This little drop down here allows for me to make things inactive. Let's say I'm like, man, this is really long. I don't need 75. I don't want a lot of pages here, this stuff. I want a real tight chart of accounts, because this is important. When I get a P&L statement or I pull a balance sheet report, any of these reports, it is built off of this. So if I do have a very robust chart of accounts, very long, that means that my reports are probably going to be very long. And there could be a lot of minutia, but you will notice there's some indenting here, right? The indenting means sub-accounts. It means that it is linked on a reporting feature to its parent account. So legal and professional, right? This little indent means that accounting, bookkeeping, and lawyer are all going to be summed up for this legal and professional. When I print kind of a summary P&L, if I do a detailed P&L, I'm going to see the minutia. I don't know. I mean, it's total personal opinion on it. I personally don't have this. I don't really care, because if I do this and I put in a sub account for lawyer, I better have a lot of lawyer bills, right? If I do this for bookkeeper, I better have a decent amount of bookkeeping bills. I ultimately am concerned about legal and professional because I do want to review that and compare that on an annual basis just to see, but do I need to go down the minutia? Because for every ounce of detail that we do want to add to this, it does take us more time. So big picture inside QuickBooks is make sure that when you're complicating things, that there is a return on your investment of time. That's a huge theory for me, because our business is not doing this. Our business is doing what makes us money. Make sure that this provides you a return. Now, if my business is dealing with lawyers a ton and lawyers are a major cost for me, yeah, I'm probably going to have this because I will want to review that specific line item. But for most businesses, legal and professionals, us, hopefully we're not even really paying attorneys very much. And bookkeepers and accountants should be kind of hopefully it. But realistically, yeah, I don't see a ton of value on that unless I was getting some sort of qualitative reporting that wanted me to do it, right? You could see like this job materials. Well, he's a landscaping company, right? So landscaping company might want to know from a job material standpoint, decks, patios, fountains, and things like that. I do also want to point out underneath income, but before expenses, there is this account called cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold, by definition, is an expense, right? It's like the old Venn diagram that when you do these expenses and you have a cost of goods sold item, the only difference between this and making the determining factor of if it needs to be cost of goods sold is that this expense is directly correlated to an income item, right? So what does that mean? For example, I am a landscaper, right? Perfect. Okay. So I'm a landscaper like this one is. Obviously, they didn't kind of divest what this is. They kind of just said generic cost of goods sold. I'd probably do something a little bit more specific. If I'm doing COGS, COGS are where I become more specific because it's directly correlated to the income, meaning as this number rises, so too should an income line item. Okay. All right. So example, if there's direct correlation. I like this one. I'd probably COGS these. If I'm a landscaper, there's a good chance that my decks and patios supplies and materials are probably going to rise at some proportionate level to my decks and patios income. Don't you think I want to know the margin, the profit, right? I want to see a number in this one, but I also want to correlate it to a cost of goods sold number in that, because I want to know, am I charging enough to do these decks and these patios? That's important. So I don't think I would actually have these to be expenses. I'd go, you know what? I think these need to be cost of goods, right? And so this is where it gets a little funky. I like to do this right the first time. I don't believe QuickBooks is going to allow me to, I'm going to give it a run, but I'm going to see if I can change these all to cost of goods sold at the same time. So I'm going to check all 5. I don't think they're gonna. There is batch actions. No, so I can make them inactive. I can't change their type. So to change their type, I actually have to come over here to the drop down and go to edit. And so from this edit, I'm going to go, you know what? I really want this to be cost of goods. Uh-oh. Changing this type of account may affect your accounting reporting issue. You want to do that? Okay, yeah, of course I do want to do this. I want to do this. Let's see if it will actually do this. And I'm not going to make it a sub account. I want it to be its own account. It's going to be job materials and the cost of goods. Let's save it up. I'm concerned that it won't do this. Yeah, QuickBooks won't do this. You cannot change this type of an account when it has existing sub accounts. So let's do it right the first time, because now you're going to see how painful this actually is to do it and get it fixed if I'm going to use this dummy account. I actually have to come into each one of these and go, you know what? I got to make it so it's not a sub account. I got to click on every single one of these guys and get them to be non-sub accounts. I can't just move the whole Christmas tree. Painful. Timing. You know, I got to go through every single one of these things. And plants and soil. Edit this out. I'm unchecking the sub account. So it's actually becoming its own root account, which is fine. I don't use a lot of sub accounts because I do want to move it around and make it easy. Even if I make it inactive, it's still not going to fix this problem. So just undoing them. You'll notice that my indents are going away. My job materials are now there. And so now I could take my job materials, boom, and, oh, sorry, this was the income item. Let's head on back down. There it is. All right, so I was moving the income stuff item, but we can use this one. We'll pretend they're all gone. And now when I have nothing else underneath it, indented, equipment rental might be cost of goods for a landscaper, right? I might go, yep, the more I do these jobs, the more I have equipment rental. Thus, it should be cost of goods. So think cost of goods correlation to revenues. What is not cost of goods? Accountants, rent, clerical staff overhead in the office overhead, right? Those get paid no matter what revenues are. So those are going to be what we call G&A, or general operating and administrative expenses. And those were the ones we're thinking to isolate. So we want that isolation when you're thinking about your business, but also at the same time, keeping it simple from that perspective. So we'll go ahead and save this and not a sub account. Go ahead and save this. Another account with a different type is already using this name. So we will go, we'll just call it job equipment rental, something, right? We can save it up. Boom. Now we'll have it. There was already something in there that was utilizing that, so it wasn't working quite perfectly, but there it is now. We do have that cost of goods. So we can move and finagle these things around so much. To me, this is too many income accounts. To me, I wouldn't do it this way. I don't think I need that many to be done that way, but maybe you do. I don't know, right? I do have, for an accounting firm, I do have business taxes. I've got consulting, I've got accounting, and I've got individual tax. So I do have multiple income items, so I can do comparable reporting. But I don't really ever do sub accounts to income. That just seems, this to me is way overkill, specifically on an income item. Does it really matter? I don't know. I know you'll have to make the determining factor by yourself. So again, spent a lot of time on this, probably more time than I want. But super important you understand the chart of accounts, because this, if this is garbage, all your reporting and everything else that comes in will also be somewhat garbagey from that. So next step from here is going to be our actually doing stuff in the system. So like I said, I spend most of my time in the transaction areas in the bank transactions, right? This is the power of QuickBooks. What you're about to see is, I'm not going to do this, but you can do this, right? These aren't bad to learn. But what you're going to see is a checking account, a savings account, and a credit card that has been synced into QuickBooks Online. This is the best part of it. So the syncing, this whole module of transactions is, I like to call it the purgatory of accounting. These transactions are not actually on your P&L. They are not on your balance sheet. They have not hit your books in any way. This is the purgatory account. We are in control of this before we tell it to its final destination over on our bank register, right? So once it hits our register, now we would be reconciling against that when we do our reconciliations, right? But for this purpose, right, you can see moments ago it went out to the checking account for the bank that we have, and it pulled down a bunch of transactions. Okay, QuickBooks has 25 transactions on this list that haven't been coded. You're going to notice that it says uncategorized, uncategorized, uncategorized. It doesn't know yet. As it begins to know, we're going to see green things here. We can also create rules for this. So let's say I'm a big rental, like I'm renting a lot of equipment from a rental. And these are all job related equipments. Every time I go there, this is for a new job and I wanted it in my cost of goods sold. Under that circumstance, what I will do is I will create a rule for this, right? So oftentimes I'll look at it and go, okay, a rental, right? We had a backhoe rental. So the bank sometimes is going to give us some extra detail. I love this. Oftentimes what it puts in here and potentially may put in here is garbage. It really will be. It's trying to guess. It has no clue. This is where we have to kind of turn our brain on and do it. So we have a few different things to do here. Categorize is going to be the one you're going to use the most, because I can use categorize to cover really these. If I pick something, record as a transfer means like on the balance sheet, it's a bank to bank transfer. Record as a credit card payment. Well, kind of obvious if it's going to be a credit card payment, but I spent this money. This is not a credit card payment. This is for a backhoe rental. So I'm going to come in here. Sure, I could pick my vendor and go, you know what? Let's go A1. Let's see if they're on the list. Nope, we don't have A1 rental. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. Why would I put a vendor into this system? I put in a vendor into this system for two reasons. I want to know how much I paid the vendor, obviously. I want to keep their information like a Rolodex. Okay. But additionally, this is a big one right here. I want to track their payments and issue a 1099 at the end of the year. Probably the most important part of vendor reporting. If you ask any accountant, I hope this is the answer. The idea is I'm going to get a W-9 from them. I'm going to put their EIN number in here, and I'm going to get all their address stuff built in here. So it's a lot times 100 easier to do 1099 reporting. Okay. So that's really the purpose of it. If I'm going to leave without saving, yes. But let's just say I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to give A1 rental a 1099. I'm renting equipment from a big company. You don't issue 1099s to big companies. If you don't know 1099 rules, talk to us. We'll teach you. But we're not. So oftentimes to keep it simple, right? The KISS method, I don't really care that I'm going to put a vendor in. This is super important though, because we put that new thing in called job equipment rental under cost of goods sold, and I want to do it, right? That's great. I'm not going to teach on this. This is in the advanced modules, but let's say I want to do some level of customer tracking. I want to do some sort of job costing, job reporting, complicated stuff. That's not for today, but I could do that and keep track of customers. It is very powerful because I can actually get a P&L by customer. Kind of cool. but I will show you another way to do it too with class tracking. The way I do it, I don't use customers because I don't want to pay $180 a month for their top version to do this. So I will continue to probably not have that, and I'll have class tracking, but we don't have class tracking activated. I'll show you that here a little bit later, but I'm going to pick this job rental. Okay, great. This is great. Now let's just say I'm going to do this a lot and I'm going to use A1 a lot. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to tell the system job equipment rental every single time I see A1. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rule, right? This little lightning bolt says, you know what? I'm going to create a rule to automatically add a payee, a category, and other details. Oh, okay. Under that circumstance, why don't I then put a vendor in here? That makes sense. I'll just add them as A1 because it's not going to hurt me because I'm not going to do this. So we'll call it A1 rental. As a vendor, I don't have this details, but I'd probably fill it out if I did. I will save it up. So we have A1 rental. Now I'm going to create a rule on this because I don't want to have to enter these in anytime. I'm going to call it the A1 rental rule. I mean, call it what you will, but I'm just going to call it something like this. And all right, here we go. Money out from a checking account. Why don't I do everything though? Right? That just means anytime I see, because I might use my credit card. I won't often use my checking card, but if I did, it's going to look at all three and it's going to apply the rule against all of it. So I don't have to create a new rule for each one of these. So I like to do all accounts when I make a rule. The description contains the following: a rental, meaning when it pulls from the bank, it sees the A rental piece and it's going to automatically code it as an expense to my job equipment rental. I love it. It's not going to put a customer on it. That would be the downside to this because it would be a different customer. You couldn't create a rule if you were using this for different customers, especially if I wanted to auto add, right? If I have customer tracking on and I'm going to use customers, I'm probably going to go, you know what? I don't want to automatically auto add. I want it to stay on this list, but it's going to tell me of a rule, and I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, let's do it. Let's save it. I think I'm going to see some greens now, aren't I? Congratulations, I am. So now you see this rule, and it took all my A rentals that were expenses, not revenue. See, we got a revenue from A rental, but it was smart enough to go, no. We can't put that to an expense. That's money coming in. That's money received. So we have to deal that differently. But if I click on description, I can actually have it sort by and show me all the A rentals. Looks like I only have 3 in here. But if I like them and I have my rules, I can just simply go boom, boom, right? And accept these. As soon as I accept these, they remove from this list. They're going to go over to my bank register and they're out of purgatory. Okay. Kind of neat, really slick. I love it. Now, let's say I accidentally set up a rule and it went to the wrong account, right? Well, there is a thing here that says rules. I can go to my rules and alter it. But also you're going to go, well, how do I get to that transaction? It's gone from this list. This is the 3 areas of purgatory. It's in purgatory, it's on my register, or it was in purgatory and I said, don't ever get to my register, right? But I love this because I can do this categorized and see these transactions and go, oh yeah, you took it. I can actually undo these, remove it from my bank register and ship it back to my for review. Let me show you, right? So let's say, oh, I did this one wrong. That isn't this. That's a different thing. Let me undo this one. It's going to take it away. It's going to shift it back over to my for review. And there it is. So we've taken it out of our register and we're back into purgatory land of accounting, right? So again, if I would have in that rule area not selected that auto add or undo that auto add, I wouldn't even see this. It would immediately just go right over to the register and I would see them in categorized. So a lot of people do like the auto add feature. It keeps this at a minimum, but then you kind of have to police these categorized in case you made a mistake. So for me, I prefer to see them on the list with this green because I can easily, if I saw all green and I liked them all, I could just go bang and accept them all in one shot. I'm in and out in like 30 seconds. But for this purpose, I don't. I like this one. So I can simply just add that one, ship it back over. Okay, let's do another one. Books by Bessie. We've got, oh, this is good, right? We got $55 expenditure, and then it looks like we maybe returned it. right? You see the money coming back from Books by Bessie about 3 months later, kind of a long time to do a return, but could be. So let's just take a look at it. So Books by Bessie, let's say this one, I don't want to create a rule. Now I advise people, there's nothing wrong with creating a rule for everything, even if it's just minor stuff. The more rules you create in the beginning, it takes time, but it speeds you up as the process goes. And this is really, I think rules and bank syncing is the best thing that QuickBooks Online offers in comparison to desktop. Desktop can do them. It's just not as smooth and not as easy. But for this, it's Books by Bessie. I don't know, maybe it's just publications and books. So I could maybe go to, let's see if there's a dues and subscriptions. Maybe this was a subscription. I don't know. I could maybe go office supplies, office expenses. I like that one, right? I like office expenses. Maybe this was a book for the office, some education to read. In the memo, this is a non-searching field, but maybe this was a book on how to plant pine trees, something, right? And I wanted just to have the memo in there. Again, non-searchable, but really good from an audit feature. If we ever needed to kind of get back to it. If you had folders, you could put in here like the receipt is in the folder or whatever you want to put in there. It works really, really good from that standpoint. And then I could create a rule. Let's do it one more time. We're just going to call this Books by Bessie. You notice when I make these rules, I often make it the same. Money out. Of course, I'm going to do all of my accounts that are synced in case I do use my card. I'm going to send it to office expense. And here we go. This one, I'm like, you know what? Let's just auto add it. As soon as I hit save, all my Books to Bessie that were money out are now gone, right? They're gone and they're immediately put over into my categorized side, right? You can see auto add. It's an auto add rule, and that will help police it in case I make a mistake there. And again, I can always go to my rules and I can change this rule and make it a little better, because when I do rules, it's important that I don't get too vague with my wording of a rule. What do I mean by that? Let's take Hicks Hardware. Okay. So let's say I look at Hicks Hardware, and this is just kind of like some job related supplies, but job expenses, but they're not directly like cost of goods sold type items. These are nuts, bolts, and screws that I buy a lot of. And sure, you could argue I'm going to have a lot more screws as I sell more decks, but it's just not material enough to really care a lot. So I'll call job expenses, but I'm going to create a rule. And unfortunately, in this rule, I'm going to call it Hicks Hardware, but you'll see what I mean. Of course, I'm going to do all my banks when I make a rule. But let's say right here, this is the important feature. If I just say hardware on this, and I'm not specific enough to put the Hicks, it's going to look for everything on my list that has the word hardware, and it's going to follow this. So let's just test it. I'm going to turn off the auto add feature. Let's see if we have any other things that say hardware. I'm going to hit save, right? And so we know that all my Hicks, the rules happened, right? All my Hicks, the rules did happen. We do have some unique things going on. I'll talk about these matching things here in about a second. But if there was anything else on this list, there isn't. But if there's anything else on this list that had the word hardware in it, that rule would have grabbed them as well. So I always like to be a little careful with the rule, from that standpoint. So let's go up to rules. And we're going to head on over to rules. And here's our rules for Hicks Hardware. I'm going to go ahead and edit this one and go, you know what? I got it. I forgot. I have to have the word Hicks in here to be a little bit more specific to make sure that it's matching what the bank is saying. And bang, we're back. Description contained. This is how the rule works, right? This is the cause and effect of the rule. Come back to my bank transactions. Okay. So that's basically recording transactions. They're going to head on over to my register. You're going to see the things that I put on the register, right? There's that A1 rental. Now it shows me my bank balance. Okay. So that's important when we're looking at that, but we're not going to go there quite yet. So bank transactions, come back. So now we have this matching thing, right? You'll notice the word add is for stuff that isn't on the register. When you see the word match, match means it is on the register. It's already there. And we don't want you to duplicate it. Please don't duplicate it. We think, this is what QuickBooks is saying. It's basically saying, we think this transaction right here is the same transaction that the bank has downloaded. So please match it. It will go to categorized. but it's not going to duplicate it over on my register, right? So that is what it's telling you when you see match. Why would I have a match and why would I not have a match? You would have a match basically because you were proactive. You were proactive and you said, you know what? I'm going to write checks out of this system. I'm going to make deposits to this system. I'm going to do all this stuff to the system. Then I'm going to tell the bank to download everything, knowing that it's going to be potentially duplicated because I want to see it match. I want more real-time data. So that's what this new button is all about. This is for those proactive people. I come in here and I'm like, you know what? I went to the bank. I made a deposit, right? Let me show you. Let's do one. Okay. So we got a deposit here on 4/14 for 694. Let me refresh this. I want those matches back. Interesting that they didn't come back. This is a dummy account, so it's not fully functioning, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to put a deposit in for a rental for $200 on this date and be like, I did this prior to May 17th. Let's say I did it on like the 15th. I did a deposit. So I came in here, I said, you know what? I'm going to make a deposit. And my deposit here is on May 17th. I did a $200 deposit. This is all because of utilizing AR, by the way. I don't like this. It's kind of complicated, I think. But I'm going to call it A1 rental. It's okay, vendor, customer. It might not like that it's a vendor, might want to have a customer in there. And this was income coming in. Notice it shows me just income because it knows it's a deposit. So it thinks must be income, right? Now it will get me to see other things, but they're always going to start me with the stuff that they think it's going to be. And I'm going to say A1 gave me maybe a discount. I don't know. They give me a gift card. I don't know. Something. I'm just going to put that in there. And sure enough, I'm going to go ahead and save and close. But I did this prior to downloading the bank. Okay. Now let's see if this will actually work. It should, but this might be non-functioning. I'll refresh it. Hey, look at that. There it goes. I just refreshed, by the way. But now you'll notice it says, hey, we see on the same date there was a $200 deposit on the register already. Please don't duplicate this and cause your bank balance to be off. Match it up. We're going to take it off that. So that's what Match is all about. Match is all about the people that are proactively doing these things on the fly to their register. Mainly for me, I do a lot of matching because I do my deposits as I go to the bank. It's kind of my double entry kind of idea, but I do a lot of bank deposits. So I have a lot of deposits being matched on my books. I rarely match expenses because I just pay them and I wait for them to come in on the download and then I just categorize them. I don't come in here proactively and go, let me put my expense in early because to me that's extra work. And again, I want to keep it easy. I do personally do deposits early because I do a little bit of categorizations and things of deposits, okay? Which is a great segue. Why do I categorize deposits? What else can we do categorizing wise? I'm going to turn on class tracking so you understand this. So up in the cog, this is where all the major features are of this, but I'm going to go to my accounts and settings and my advanced settings here. And under categories, my track classes is off. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm now, I'll tell it to warn me. I'm now going to get a new field that's going to arrive in each one of these types of things. If I do a lot of classing of expenses, it's very difficult to create rules because a class could be very different. So let me explain classes. To me, classes are ways that I want to look at my P&L differently. Meaning, for me, as an accountant, I class track my staff. They are the profit centers. They are the people that I want to be able to see. So if I've got like Dan or Dave or my tax professionals or even my dad, I want to see, okay, where is he done? Well, maybe he's being paid based upon the work that they're being done. Well, I'm going to use a class and I'm going to say, hey, guess what? This income item right here, right, needs to be categorized. Let me split this out. It's not showing me classes, of course. Let's see if I can get it to show me classes. Again, this is the dummy version. So there it is. All right. So now we have a new field for classing. So let's say this was some revenue in and you had like, and this was a landscaping company. You wanted to know that this was Billy or Bob or Sue. I might have a class called Bob, right? Simple. It's just a field. So I can get a P&L that shows it by class. And I'm going to say, okay, Bob did this work. And he just did some services. Maybe this was for 1, 2, 3, 4 Pleasant Street. And there was some trees done. And that's it. That's all I really care about. We'll call it, it's a service, so let's call it tree trimming. Makes more sense than selling trees. And I'm going to go ahead and add it. Right now, by putting that class tracking in there, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to come to my reports and I'm going to look at my P&L by class. I'm going to star it. As soon as I star it, it's going to come up as my favorite. So it comes up at the top. I'm going to look at my P&L by class and you see Bob showed up. Boom. And my P&L is going to go, guess what? Bob has made me profit. Now I could actually have Bob's salary in there. I could put expenses against Bob. I could really see what Bob is doing for the overall company, right? But so use your imagination on class tracking. Couldn't you also, if you had 2 locations for a business, wouldn't you do locations? I want to know what the store over here does comparative to the store over there. Again, more difficult from an accounting because I've added a new layer of minutia, but could be incredibly important to get a P&L by class. That is the purpose of class tracking. In my mind, I use it for divisional P&Ls. Do I really care about a divisional balance sheet? Do I care whether the checkbook is classified, that the balance is here, the balance is there? No, not really. It's really all about the P&L. That's really what I'm trying to focus in on from that side. So that's the benefit of class tracking. I know I kind of jumped ahead there, but that's fine. That's fine. We'll get into reporting. So this is kind of neat. I really like it. Now, again, some people are going to say, but Jonathan, I want to write checks professionally out of QuickBooks. Okay. All right. Deep breath in. For me, I try to tell people, while it works, we have limitations, Intuit software, trying to get the lines to line up on your printer. Every printer is a little different, trying to get the PDF to print right, but I'm going to show you how to do it. I come to expenses, right? I'm going to head on over to my expense area. I'm going to add a new transaction. Let's say I'm going to write a new check. Boom. I put it in. It's going to bring me my check. Here's the important thing. This is going to go right to the register, folks. This does not go to my transactions. And remember, when I do this live and I then download it from the bank a few days later, once it clears, it should match it, right? That's why we see the match. It's to prevent duplication in that purgatory area. So here I have to pick what account I'm doing it out of. It's only going to give me bank accounts. You can't write checks out of a credit card, even though in theory you kind of can. You're not from an accounting standpoint from this, right? I choose my payee. Let's do our favorite A1 rental. Since we know we added that vendor up, there we go. We got our vendor. Now we're going to write a check, and I'm going to immediately take it right against. Oh wow! So they've got a lot of features set up here. I'm not getting into a lot of these. I'm going to go straight to the category. I'm writing a check for job, equipment rental, right? And I'm going to say this is for 955 organic drive, right? Again, description, it's kind of the memo, non-searchable, great. Oh, and Bob did this one again. So let's code this to Bob, okay? And I can add them on the fly. If there was Susie or Tom or whoever, I could do that. I could put my accounts. And this was, let's say we're going to write a check for $500, okay? Billable, we're not going to worry about this. This is just activated. It's very complex, but it's activated, but the system can do it. Now, here's what's kind of cool. I don't think I would ever do this page if I wasn't going to print the check. Because if I'm not going to print the check, there's a whole lot here. I'm going to put this directly into my register, or I'm going to wait for it to clear the bank, and then I get into my downloads. This is really, I use this screen strictly if I want that professional check that I want to write and print from that system, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and print the check, right? It's going to save it. It's going to come up to print. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting, right? Select the type of print. Okay, I got one of those where the checks are on the top. I got a little perforation, this is blank, this is blank. And you're going to load. So it basically tells you, okay, first, boom, you can order these checks from Intuit. That's an expensive source. You can get them cheaper. Look around. Checksunlimited.com, by the way. Load blank paper in your printer. Make sure you know which way is up and down. Preview and print the print sample, right? So this is where you want to look to make sure you got to jump through some hoops here. Make sure the lines line up. You do have some alignment abilities to play around in here, right? Yes, it works. Everything lined up perfectly. When you buy checks, for example, right? I buy checks, and I'll stop a screen share here for a minute so you can see these. I buy checks, right, without lines on it. And the reasoning is, you see no lines here. That's the ability of, I don't have to worry about how the checks are printing on a line. Oh, the words were over a line. I don't have to care. So that's a little secret sauce. Don't get lines. It's going to make your life a lot easier when you do physically write checks, when you buy those trifold checks. Again, this is for the people that really want that. I want a professional check. If you write one or two checks, you can do it by hand. And then once you do it by hand, you can just wait on the transaction to clear the bank. You'll download it from the bank. You can categorize it and load it. It's the keep it simple method. And we really, really like that. Okay. So again, lots to play around with. Last in here is that we do have other accounts. Let's say you went and opened up an Amex card. Look at this, link account. Oh, that's kind of cool. I got a new card. I want to link that too. So let's do this. Oh, interesting. They kind of give me some gimmies, but let's say I don't see American Express here. So let me type in American. There it is. Now, American Express is kind of complicated because they do have different places you can go. But let's just say it's American Express here. And again, we're on a dummy version, but at this point, I would connect to the account. It would ask for my username and password. It might do two-factor authentication the first time to get it caught up in, and then bang, it will add as a new item. When let's see if we can get out of here. It would add a new little box up here for every new one. You can do as many as you want. I don't think there's a limit. It's just that every single one you add needs to be reconciled. Okay. And that's our last feature that we're going to kind of talk about. Once this has all been cleaned out, right? Once this is all good, let's say I come back to my account here, and for all intents and purposes, everything's perfect. Okay, everything's perfect. I'm going to check this, and everything here looks good. They're not letting me actually auto accept these. They don't want me to do that for some reason. Normally I can do that, but for this one, they're not letting me. But let's just say we're all done. This number goes to 0. When we're all done, if this bank balance here matches our number here inside QuickBooks, congratulations. You're done, really. You don't actually have to reconcile because you kind of already did, because you already matched the bank internally. Now, where you will be wrong is for those people that are proactively writing checks, right? If you do over here where you're going to do a check or you do an expense and you put it in prior to it clearing, you'll never will match. That's where we go over to the register. And from our register, we use this lovely green button called reconcile. Okay. So I am going to show you what it looks like to reconcile. The process of reconciliation is where we compare our bank statement against what is on our register, not what is here. Again, this is the purgatory. It is not over here until I've told it to. But once I'm on my register, now I see my actual, looks like the old school, like 1980s registers, right? Grandma and grandpa's checkbook. They've even put the shading on there to kind of give it that feel. But from here, I'm going to click my reconcile button, and it's going to ask me some questions. Okay, I'll get started. Let's get reconciled. We're going to reconcile the checking account. Previous reconciliation was at 5,000. This is what the bank statement said. Okay, this should be the beginning balance on the bank statement, right? Not the computer, not QuickBooks, but the bank statement. So when I'm looking at my bank statement, I should see beginning 5,000. If it doesn't, Houston, we have a problem. We got to go back in time and get back to where it does work. So now we're going to go ending date. Okay, ending date let's say we're going to reconcile 4/31/2024. Okay. And from there, actually, there's not 31 days, is there? There's only 30 days. That would make sense. Perfect. Right. Ending balance. That's why it stayed red, not 31 days. Ending balance is, I don't know, let's say it's 2,500. What is this number that I'm putting in? In theory, I would be looking at my bank statement. I would look at my bank statement. Now, most people go, well, I get my bank statement once a month. Sure, you do. But with online banking, couldn't I do this on any date with any amount with online banking? Yeah. Yeah. In fact, when I do my books, I reconcile at random, the most random times when I get in there. Typically once a week on a Friday, I will reconcile my checkbook to make sure it's clean. This is your business. This is your baby. Make sure you got it going. You're reconciling. It'll take minutes when you do it often, right? It's really great. So I put in the ending date on my statement or my online account if I'm looking at it. I put in my ending balance based upon this date per the bank, and now we reconcile. Now it's going to give me a list of everything that's undone, and it's going to start to do the mathematics for me. It's right now it's saying, hey, guess what? You're off by 1978. That means you have items here that are not checked that need to clear the bank. You'll notice that this is smart. The system's smart, right? The bank goes, hey, guess what? You cleared this one. Okay. Now I could go through and go, yeah, that one cleared. And as I do it, this difference is going to get closer to zero, right? Oh, that one cleared, that one cleared. Again, I need payments to clear to get my difference to zero because we started at 5,000. I put in 2,500. So of course I'm missing $2,500 worth of expenditures. As soon as I put in a deposit, it's going to go up and be further off. Ta-da, right? So if I do put these deposits and say they clear too, based on my statement, that just means I got to have more expenses to get there. And that's what I'm doing, is I will get it closer and closer and closer and closer. And I'm off by 36 bucks. So maybe it was this one. So you can see I get to the point where this goes to zero. Once it goes to zero, I will get a lovely little green button. Now I'm not going to go to zero because I arbitrarily made up this number. But when I go to zero, I will have a button here that allows me to say completed and done. If it's difference, it's going to go, you still have to figure it out, bro. Right? So figure out why you're off, why your bank says you have this amount while QuickBooks says you have this amount. Tell us where the difference is. Super important. Really, really important if I'm proactive and I'm putting in checks and I'm putting in expenses. I'm putting in bank deposits prior to going over to my transactions where the purgatory is. If I strictly use this to do all of my transactions, congratulations, you're pretty much almost always going to balance. Some banks are not as technologically as advanced as others. They will not allow you to sync their accounts. I am sorry, choose wisely when you pick a bank. But if you pick the big ones, Wells Fargo, unfortunately, probably the worst customer service bank I know, the best technology when it comes to utilizing this. And so if you do have smaller credit unions and things, they might not have this functionality. So be cautious and where you pick to do your banking to utilize this feature. But again, you utilize this and you don't do a lot of proactive stuff and you're just recording money in and money out and transactions, you're almost always going to balance unless there's some level of weird shadow transaction that shows up. And it does. Periodically, you're going to go, how did that get there? I don't even see it at the bank. It's weird. I know. We would just find that one and we go, oh yeah, that's weird. It doesn't even exist. I'll exclude it, zip it over to the excluded area. It's off there before I can head on over to the bank register. Okay. Last topic, running out of time, is reporting, right? Once these are all gone, I've reconciled my checkbook. I've done it all. All my transactions are in. Let's see the good stuff. The whole reason we did this is that we want to see reports. I want to come over and I want to look at my balance sheet. Most owners don't really care about balance sheets like we accountants do. They want to look at their P&L. We're going to go to our P&L and we're going to now see, wow, okay, so it breaks it up. I want to condense it down, okay? This is from January to May 17th. My income in was $10,808.77, right? Everything is reconciled. This report is only good if everything is in and everything is reconciled. Without it, you could be off massive amounts. This is garbage without everything being reconciled in. Okay. I can see all the delineations. I can see what's going on. Every number is clickable, by the way. Oh, how did that number get to be what it is? I just click on it, and it's going to pull up an itemized report of everything that's in there, right? Bang, it shows me everything that's in there. I don't like this view. They're going to push this on us soon. I like the classic view. That's this little view. I don't know why. I'm just used to it over the years. It's been that way for years. Now they're doing this modern thing. They're probably going to force modern on us eventually, but not quite yet. They haven't. And so this is a great report, right? I can see my general operating expenses. I can look at this and go, wow, this number is really kind of big. Maybe this should be up here in my cost of goods. It's more correlated to my revenues than it is on an overhead item. And then I see my profit. Super important, right? This is the number we pay tax on. It is our profit. As long as we haven't commingled personal items. Again, I didn't touch on that, but again, this is your business. This is not your family's household budget commingled in with your business. Keep your business separate. There are different software products if you want to do home finance. Quicken is perfect for home finance. Do not commingle personal. This has got to be deduction, deduction, deduction. We would put these numbers on your tax return. There is an expectation you will have a receipt for every single detailed minutia in here in case you get audited, because at the end of the year, we're going to say, yeah, guess what? They brought in 10,808, but they didn't have any profit, so they're not going to pay any taxes. Very auditable, right? An auditor would go, well, why are they in business? Let's audit them. Let's make sure they're not making up expenses. And that's super important. So that's the concept of reporting. And then obviously the balance sheet does have some abilities. Hard to read balance sheets, but again, it's the moment of time shows what we owe on liabilities, what we have in our bank accounts, and doing all of those types of things. So that's the skinny on it. And yeah, we'll be able to kind of finalize those types of things. So you're good to go from that perspective. And that is it for today. So I will have this thing uploaded. Don, you'll have a copy of this verbally. So you'll have a chance to read the whole commentary of everything I go through. Kyle does most of these most of the time. I did it today because this one's being recorded and put on YouTube. So you will have a chance to see all of those things. Again, just basics, just to forewarn everybody. We just kind of went through some of these features here, the overview, spent a lot of time in transactions, right? The limbo accounts, spent a lot of time in chart of accounts, going through every single one of these, understanding the backbone, sub accounts, some of those things, writing checks, making deposits, getting everything done on that side. And you are set for today. We'll do more advanced stuff later, but this is just a good kind of 1 hour start to get you rocking and rolling. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.